Welcome to Reform Thinking. Have you ever tried to, learn a new language and you just hit that frustrating wall?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like when a word just completely refuses to map onto your native tongue.
Right. You open a dictionary expecting a clean, clinical definition. Because, we are so conditioned by modern English to expect precision.
You really are.
We want the dictionary to act like a scalpel, isolating a noun from a verb, separating a physical object from an abstract concept. We just want clear borders around our vocabulary.
Well, it is kind of a modern luxury to expect language to behave like a neatly organized filing cabinet. We want binary categorization.
Yeah, but then you step into the world of ancient Near Eastern languages, and, well, I've been looking through the notes for today, and that neat little filing cabinet is completely overturned.
Oh, 100%. It's scattered all over the floor.
It really is. We're dealing with a linguistic landscape that is just incredibly fluid. So, for you listening, today we are conducting a rigorous analysis, a real deep dive into a single Hebrew word.
And it is tiny.
So tiny. In English transliteration, it is just 3 letters, K-E-N, pronounced kun.
Yeah, but the brevity of that syllable is totally deceiving. The conceptual weight it carries across the biblical text is staggering.
Right. And I should mention the sources we brought to the table today, they are entirely lexical. We are looking at the authoritative Hebrew dictionaries.
Which is where the real heavy lifting happens. Specifically, we're drawing from Gesenius's Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon, along with the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament, which academics usually just call ALOT.
And also the theological word book of the Old Testament. Right.
Spot on. Yeah.
Okay, I want to set the stage for you listening to this. We are looking at a word that signifies a moral virtue, like being honest.
Right.
But then the very same word signifies a logical deduction, usually translated as therefore.
Yeah.
And then in the very same ancient texts, it refers to the physical bronze base of a washing sink in a desert tabernacle.
Which is quite the leap.
It is. And then just to completely break all logical progression, it is the specific word used for a swarm of Egyptian gnats.
Yeah, it's the kind of lexical range that makes translation work incredibly difficult. I mean, Wilhelm Gesenius, he's the 19th century German scholar who compiled the primary lexicon we are using today. He spent his entire life trying to untangle these ancient roots.
I can't even imagine.
He had to look at how a single phonetic sound mutated across thousands of years, carrying all these disparate meanings.
So let's start untangling it. I want to look at the first major category in our sources. The dictionaries classify this first use as an adjective.
Yeah, an adjective.
And the English translations provided are correct, right, accurate, righteous, or honest.
Yeah, and to understand how an ancient Hebrew mind conceptualized honesty, we have to look at the verbal root of this word.
Which is?
The root is K-G-W-N-O-N. And it literally means to be upright, to be erect, to be firm, or to be established.
Oh, wow. So honesty is not just about avoiding a lie. It has an actual physical posture.
Right, it's structural.
I want to ground this in the historical narratives because there is a specific instance where this word is the absolute center of the conflict. I am looking at Genesis chapter 42.
Ah, yes, the famine.
Yeah, this is the massive famine narrative in the ancient Near East.
The famine is severe enough that it forces people from Canaan to travel all the way down into Egypt to buy grain, because Egypt had those massive storehouses.
Right. And Joseph's brothers make that journey, which, decades earlier, these same brothers sold Joseph into slavery.
A minor family dispute.
Yeah, minor detail. But now, Joseph has risen through the ranks of the Egyptian empire. He's the vizier, second only to Pharaoh. He controls the food supply for the known world.
And here come the brothers.
Here they come. They walk into his court, bow down to the earth before him, and they have absolutely no idea they were begging for food from the brother they betrayed.
But Joseph recognizes them immediately.
Of course he does.
But he conceals his identity. He decides to test their character. He speaks to them harshly through an interpreter, and he accuses them of being foreign spies looking for the vulnerabilities of the land.
Which is terrifying. They are standing in front of the most powerful man in the world, accused of espionage, which is a capital offense.
Oh.
And their entire defense hinges on our specific word. They say to the vizier of Egypt, "We are all sons of one man. We are Konim."
The plural of cone.
Right. They are claiming to be honest men.
And they repeat that claim multiple times throughout the chapter. They say, "Your servants are Konim," and Joseph just throws it back at them, saying, "By this I will know that you are Konim."
Right. He demands they leave one brother in prison and bring their youngest brother back to prove their claim.
Yeah.
I am trying to visualize the underlying logic of their defense here, because they are not simply telling Joseph that they are speaking factual information in that specific moment.
No, not at all.
If the root KWN means upright or established, they are claiming a state of being. They are telling the vizier that they are men of structural substance. They are upright men, which is highly ironic considering their past.
It's supreme irony. They're claiming to be structurally sound men to the brother whose life they tried to destroy. But the linguistic function is clear. Honesty in this ancient context is a structural reality.
I love that. And we see a similar usage in the book of Numbers, chapter 27.
With the daughters of Zelophehad?
Yes. The daughters of Zelophehad approach Moses. This is a fascinating legal case. Their father died in the wilderness without having any sons.
Which was a massive legal issue back then.
Huge. Under the customary law of that era, the land inheritance would pass out of their immediate family. The daughters would be left with nothing, and their father's name would be erased from the tribal allotments.
So they stand before Moses, Eleazar the priest, the chiefs, and the entire congregation at the entrance of the tent of meeting. It's basically a Supreme Court setting.
The highest court in the land.
Right. And they argue that they should inherit their father's land to preserve his name. They are challenging a massive legal precedent.
And Moses does not make a unilateral decision. He takes their case directly to God. And God's response in Numbers 27.7 uses our word.
He says,
God declares, the daughters of Zelophehad speak kun. They speak rightly.
They are completely accurate. Their legal argument aligns perfectly with an objective standard of justice.
You know, I want to workshop an analogy here to help visualize this concept of an objective standard.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about a builder constructing a brick wall. A skilled mason will use a plumb line.
Right, the string with the weight.
Yeah, it's a simple tool, just a string with a lead weight attached to the bottom. Gravity pulls the string perfectly straight. The builder constantly checks the rising wall against the string. If the bricks align perfectly with the string, the builder says the wall is true.
That is a highly accurate way to conceptualize the Hebrew mindset. If a wall is true, it means it is structurally sound. It is physically established according to an external objective standard.
Gravity?
Yes. In the case of the plumb line, the standard is gravity. The string reveals reality.
So when Joseph's brothers desperately claim they are Konim, or when God validates the legal argument of the women by saying they speak Kon, it is like saying their words and their lives align with the plumb line.
Precisely.
They are straight up and down, they are not leaning, they are not crooked.
And the lexicons confirm this physical orientation by highlighting the antonym.
The opposite.
Yeah, the opposite phrase is loose cone. It literally means not right. The source and point is to Proverbs 15.7, which states that the heart of a fool is loose cone.
So the heart of a fool is not right, it is structurally compromised.
Gesenius notes in his lexicon that loose cone implies vanity or folly. It is the conscious failure to conform to an objective standard of justice or reality.
Wow.
If you drop the plumb line next to the fool's heart, the heart is leaning wildly off-center. It is crooked. It is bound to collapse under its own weight.
Because it is untrue. And not just untrue in the sense of telling a lie. It is untrue to reality itself.
Yeah, and we see this historical application in 2 Kings 17.9. The text describes how the Israelites secretly did things against the Lord their God that were luchkin.
Not right.
Right. They built high places, set up pillars, and burned incense to other gods. These actions were not right. They deviated from the established covenant. They ignored the plumb line completely.
So if kin represents an upright, objective standard of reality, it makes perfect logical sense that the word evolves as the language grows.
Language is always moving.
Right. It shifts from being an adjective describing the structural integrity of a person's character to an adverb confirming that reality has actually occurred. Which brings us to the second major classification in the lexicon.
Yes, the second major definition functions as an adverb. The dictionaries translate it as thus, so, or in the right manner.
And this is common, right?
It is by far the most frequent usage in the biblical text. It appears over 340 times.
Over 340 times. That makes it the connective tissue of the entire Hebrew Bible.
It really does. And its most famous application occurs right at the very beginning of the text. This is the word used to describe the manifestation of creation itself.
Genesis 1.
Yeah, in Genesis chapter 1, God speaks. The phrase, let there be light, or let the waters be gathered together, goes out. And immediately after the divine command is given, the text consistently reads, Weikon.
And it was so.
And it was so.
Ruh.
The Hebrew is Weiki, meaning, and it was, followed by con, meaning so or thus or right.
Okay.
This usage confirms that the resulting physical reality perfectly matches the spoken command. The spoken word of God is the plumb line. The physical universe is the wall. When the text says "Wehi con," it is announcing that the universe aligned perfectly to the standard.
That is wild. It feels very much like a mathematical equal sign or maybe a sequence of computer code.
Oh, how so?
Well, a programmer inputs a specific command sequence into the terminal. If the syntax is perfectly accurate, the computer executes the command. Wayekanon feels like the completed execution sequence. God inputs the command, and the output is con. 100% specified. Zero errors.
You know, I see the appeal of the computer code analogy, but I think it misses the organic moral wheat of the Hebrew concept.
Oh, okay. Push back on that.
Well, code isn't different. A machine executes a command because it has no alternative. The biblical picture is more about a reality that is morally obligated to obey the Creator. It is not mechanical, it is relational. The universe is actively conforming to an objective standard of truth.
Ah, I see. That makes a lot of sense. A computer does not have a choice, but the creation narrative presents a universe responding to sovereignty. The con is a moral confirmation, not just a mechanical readout.
Right. Gesenius also notes that con, as an adverb, often answers to the preposition ka'asher, which means just as.
Okay, Ka'asher.
Yeah, this creates a comparative structure in the language. The
Yeah.
formula is, just as X happened, so, or Cain, Y happened. It establishes direct proportions and relationships.
Okay, I am looking at how this comparative structure functions in the historical narratives. The sources point us to Exodus chapter 1, verse 12.
When they were enslaved.
Yeah, the Israelites are enslaved in Egypt. The new Pharaoh is terrified of their population growth, so he tries to break them through horrific, harsh labor. But the text uses this exact comparative structure to describe the outcome.
What does it say?
It says, but the more they were oppressed, the more, or kon, they multiplied and spread.
The literal Hebrew phrasing is highly revealing there. It reads,
Hmm.
just as they afflicted them, so they multiply.
Wow.
It establishes a direct proportion between the oppression and the blessing. For every unit of affliction the Egyptian taskmasters applied, an equal and corresponding unit of multiplication occurred. The keen acts as the fulcrum on a scale, perfectly balancing the two clauses.
It shows you the divine mechanics operating behind the narrative. The oppression was supposed to destroy them, but the con reversed the intended outcome while maintaining the mathematical proportion.
It's beautiful structure.
And this word is not just used in historical or mathematical ways. It is highly poetic. The lexicons reference Song 42.2, as the deer pants for the water brooks, so can my soul pants for you, O God.
That is a stunning application of the comparative structure. The psalmist takes an observable, physical reality, a deer dying of thirst, desperately seeking a water source in an arid landscape, and maps it perfectly onto an internal spiritual reality.
The physical thirst is the plumb line.
Exactly. The spiritual longing aligns to it. The kin makes the poetic connection valid.
Okay, so when you establish facts, like saying a wall is straight, or when you say A equals B, the human mind naturally wants to take the next logical step. We draw conclusions.
Of course.
If A equals B, then C must follow. And this linguistic evolution brings us to the words function in logic and prophecy.
And this happens when ancient Hebrew writers began attaching prepositions to kind. Tiny prefixes completely alter the function of a word.
As prefixes tend to do.
Right. If you attach the preposition al, which means upon or over, to kun, you get the compound word alkun.
So what does alkan accomplish in a sentence?
The lexicons define it as on that account, or therefore. It is frequently used by the biblical authors to assign the origin of a name or to establish a long-standing custom.
The story of the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11 is a perfect example of this, right?
Yes.
The people are building a massive tower to make a name for themselves and avoid being scattered. God intervenes and confuses their languages so they can no longer understand each other's speech. The building project collapses, and the people are scattered over the face of the earth.
And then the text concludes the entire narrative.
It says, therefore, Al-Kun, its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language.
The alcone looks backward in time. It says, because of the events that just occurred, this resulting historical fact is established. It is an etiology, an origin story anchor. It connects the present reality of the city's name to the past action of divine intervention.
Okay, but there is another prepositional combination in the dictionaries. If you add the prefix lo, which means to or for, you create the word laken. The dictionaries also translate this as therefore.
Yeah, but while the English translation is the same, Laken functions vastly differently than elkon.
How so?
Well, while elkon is used by a narrator to explain how a place got its name, laken is the preferred terminology of the prophets. It is the hinge upon which divine declarations swing. Over and over in the prophetic books, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Amos, you see a highly specific structural pattern.
Like a legal case, right. The prophet will deliver a crushing list of the people's failures. They have abandoned the covenant, they have oppressed the poor, they have worshipped false gods, they have ignored the widows and the orphans.
Yeah, the evidence is laid out. And then comes the hinge. The text will say, "Therefore, Lakin, thus says the Lord."
Ouch!
It introduces a divine declaration or decree of judgment based entirely on the preceding evidence. It is the ultimate logical deduction in the ancient world. Because you have done all these wicked things, Lakin, I will bring this specific consequence.
A hammer drops.
Right.
Yeah.
The Theological Word Book of the Old Testament and Gesenius both highlight this extensively. It is a word of unavoidable consequence.
Now, I saw a note in the Gesenius source material that threw me completely off balance.
Oh, which part?
If looking means a logical therefore based on previous actions, and usually in the prophets those actions are covenant-breaking sins that demand severe judgment, how do the lexicons explain its use as nevertheless or yet in certain passages?
Ah, yes.
That feels like the exact opposite of a logical consequence. Therefore means the outcome is guaranteed. Nevertheless means the expected outcome is being completely subverted.
You have identified one of the most brilliant linguistic deflections in the entire Hebrew language. Gesenius explicitly details how the causal momentum of the word deflects into an adversative sense.
An adversative sense, meaning it introduces a sharp contrast.
Yeah. Think about the massive momentum of a prophetic judgment. The prophet lists the rebellion, the idolatry, the total failure of the society. The logical momentum is building toward a catastrophic therefore.
Right.
The people deserve destruction. The law demands it. The plumb line shows the wall is completely crooked and must be torn down. The wrecking ball is swinging. But then in passages like Isaiah 10.24, the text pivots dramatically.
Oh, right. In Isaiah 10, the Assyrian Empire is threatening to annihilate Jerusalem. The people are terrified. And frankly, based on the previous chapters outlining their sin, they completely deserve the Assyrian invasion. They deserve the judgment.
They do.
But God speaks to Isaiah and says, "Therefore, Lakin, thus says the Lord God of hosts, O my people who dwell in Zion, be not afraid of the Assyrians."
That's total pivot.
Based on the preceding context, the word should mean, therefore, prepare to be destroyed. But the lexicons note that here it means, despite what you have done, nevertheless, do not be afraid.
The hinge swings in the opposite direction. It signifies a transition from fierce rebukes to unmerited consolations.
That's incredible.
You see the same mechanism at work in the book of Job, chapter 20, verse 2. Zophar is arguing fiercely with Job. Job has just delivered an intense, threatening speech to his friends, warning them of judgment. Zophar responds, "Therefore, Lakan, my thoughts answer me."
Okay.
Gesenius translates this phrase as, "Nevertheless, my thoughts lead me to answer," meaning, in spite of your boasting and threatening words, I am not intimidated, and I have an answer for you.
It acts like a fulcrum. The momentum is rushing in one direction, and Laken takes all that weight and redirects it.
And the theological implications of that deflection in the prophetic literature are immense.
Oh, absolutely.
The objective standard, the plumb line of the law, demands absolute judgment. But God, retaining his sovereign prerogative over the covenant, inputs an adversative grace. You have broken the covenant. You deserve the Assyrian invasion. Nevertheless, Laken, I will act to save you. The expected consequence is deflected by grace.
Wow.
And Gesenius even notes a fascinating linguistic ripple effect that occurred because of this specific usage.
Wait, what happened to the language?
The Arabic word for however, or nevertheless, is loken. Gesenius points out that this Arabic particle undoubtedly sprang from the specific adversative Hebrew usage of loken.
Really?
Yes. The semantic shift from therefore to nevertheless was so established in the ancient Near East that it birthed the standard vocabulary for contrast in a sister language. The theological concept of grace interrupting judgment literally altered the dictionary of neighboring nations.
That is a staggering detail.
It's amazing.
Okay, so we have covered three massive conceptual territories so far. We started with the adjective kin, representing honesty and an upright measure of truth. Then we looked at the adverb kun, confirming that the physical creation occurred thus and so.
Yeah.
Then we moved into logic and prophecy, where kun forms the structural basis of deductions and the divine nevertheless. All of these uses are abstract. They deal with logic, morality, and speech.
Correct.
But the sources reveal that this same root produces something you can actually touch with your hands.
Yeah, we're moving from the abstract realm into the physical world. The lexicons identify another major definition, deriving from a related root, kann. In this form, kun functions as a noun, and the dictionaries define it as a place, a station, a base, or a pedestal.
An actual physical object made of metal or wood?
Yes, the text details specific architectural references. In Exodus chapter 30, God is giving Moses the highly detailed blueprints for the tabernacle in the wilderness. He commands Moses to make a bronze basin for washing.
And it needs a base.
Right, the text specifies that the basin must have a bronze kun, a base, a pedestal.
This is the bronze laver. It is the station where the priests would wash their hands and feet before entering the tent of meeting or approaching the altar. The consequence for approaching the holy space without washing was death.
So the basin holds the water of purification, but the kun holds the basin. It is the structural support that keeps the heavy bronze bowl elevated off the dirt floor of the desert.
That makes total sense.
We see this exact architectural term used again in 1 Kings 7.31. The text is describing the elaborate bronze water carts built by Hiram of Tyre for Solomon's massive temple in Jerusalem. The text mentions a pedestal, a ken, supporting the structure.
And this word is not restricted to religious architecture in the temple, right? The sources point to Isaiah 33.23.
Right. Isaiah uses a fascinating maritime reference. He is describing a society using the imagery of a ship that is falling apart in a storm. He says, "Your tackle hangs loose. It cannot hold the mast in its place."
In its place.
The Hebrew phrase translated as "in its place" uses our word. It is referring to the physical base housing that holds the mast of a ship. The Greek Septuagint translates it as mesodomor. The Latin Vulgate uses modius. It is the reinforced socket at the very bottom of the ship's hull where the giant wooden mast is seated.
Think about the thematic consistency here. We started with the adjective kan, meaning moral uprightness, being structurally sound in your character. Now we are looking at the noun kan. It is the physical object that allows something else to stand upright.
Yes.
It is the socket. It is the anchor. A towering ship's mast cannot stand upright against gale force winds unless it is seated deep within the con of the hull.
It needs that foundation.
Right. The heavy bronze basin of the tabernacle cannot stand upright without the bronze con beneath it. The physical noun perfectly mirrors the abstract adjective.
It provides the necessary footing. Without the solid base, the physical object falls over in the dirt. Without honesty and objective truth, the society falls over.
And this structural concept bleeds over into human structures and hierarchies as well. The lexicons note that the word also translates to an office or a stead.
It means a position, an office, or a rank. It is the human, societal equivalent of a pedestal.
The story of Joseph in prison gives us a perfect look at this. In Genesis 40, Joseph is in an Egyptian dungeon. He interprets the dreams of Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker, who are also imprisoned. He tells the cupbearer that in 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up his head and restore him to his kun,
To his station.
his office. And 3 days later, in Genesis 50.3, and it happens, the cupbearer is placed back on his kun, handing the cup to Pharaoh.
And the book of Daniel provides even more examples. Daniel chapter 11 is a dense, highly detailed prophetic chapter outlining the rise and fall of various kings and empires across the ancient world.
Lots of turnover in that chapter.
So much turnover. And throughout the chapter, it repeatedly describes a king falling from power and another king arising in his kun, in his head, in his place.
It is a defined slot in the architecture of a kingdom, like a socket for a mast. The king dies, the human mast is removed, but the kin, the office, the throne remains entirely intact.
It's waiting for the next one.
Yeah, the next king steps into that socket. It is an objective reality that exists independently of the person occupying it. The office of the cupbearer existed whether that specific man was sitting in a dungeon or standing in the palace. The Khan is the established station.
It implies that human authority is not just sheer force, it is architectural. It requires an established base to function legitimately.
Let's review the landscape before we step into the final, strangest part of the lexicon. We have objective truth and honesty. We have the execution of reality at the spoken word of creation. We have logical deductions and prophetic decrees. We have the architectural bases of temples and ships. We have the political offices of empires.
It's quite a list.
It is a majestic, orderly, highly philosophical word family. It is all about stability, structure, and reality.
Yeah.
And then we pivot to the final definition found in the dictionaries, and it is incredibly jarring.
Yeah, we reach the etymological enigma.
Gnats. We're talking about bugs.
The word is kan, and in the plural form, it is kinim. It refers to the swarm of insects in the third plague of Egypt in Exodus chapter 8.
I need to set the scene for this because the context is vital. Moses and Aaron are confronting Pharaoh. They have already turned the Nile River into blood, destroying the lifeblood of the Egyptian economy and religion.
Yep.
Then they brought up a massive infestation of frogs from the river. Pharaoh still refuses to let the Israelites go. So God tells Moses to have Aaron strike the dust of the earth with his staff.
And Aaron strikes the dust, and the text says all the dust of the earth became kinim throughout all the land of Egypt. The text notes that they came upon man and beast.
What exactly were these kinim? The lexical sources detail a massive historical debate over the translation of this single word.
Oh, the debate has raged for millennia. If you consult the Greek Septuagint, which is the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, completed a few centuries before Christ, the translators called them snice.
What kind of insect is a snife?
It refers to a type of biting gnat or a mosquito. However, Jewish Talmudic scholars and the first-century historian Flavius Josephus argued vehemently that the word actually meant lice.
Well, lice creates a very different kind of infestation profile than a swarm of flying gnats.
Gesenius notes this historical debate carefully in his lexicon. He points out that the Talmudists even used the singular form kina for a louse in later iterations of the Hebrew language.
Okay.
But modern lexicographers and scholars looking at the geography and the linguistic evidence lean heavily back toward the Septuagint's interpretation.
The mosquitoes.
Right. They argue for a species of stinging marsh gnats or mosquitoes found in the swampy regions of Egypt, specifically along the Nile Delta. Gesenius even cites specific scientific classifications, like Culex molestus, which is a notoriously aggressive mosquito species known to plague that specific region.
So if the word means a physical base, an objective standard of truth, and a prophetic declaration, and then suddenly it is a biting bug, my brain immediately tries to find the visual or logical connection.
Sure, we want it to make sense.
I'm guessing here, but is it because a swarm of insects covers the ground the way a massive bronze base covers the floor?
You actually just hit on the primary linguistic theory advanced by several 19th century scholars. They attempted to find the linguistic bridge between the pedestal and the bug.
Really?
Yeah. Theory 1 connects the insect back to the root knn, which can mean to cover or to envelop. The picture here is that a swarm of gnats, or a massive infestation of lice, literally covers the ground. In Exodus 8, the text says the dust of the earth became kinim. The insects blanketed the land, covering it completely. The connection is the visual of a covering layer.
Okay, so the base of a pillar covers the ground beneath it, and a swarm covers the land. That makes sense visually. But I know Gesenius had a different theory.
The second theory, which Gesenius personally seems to prefer in his notes, links the word to a root meaning to pinch or to sting. He points out that it could be cognate to the Greek word nizine, which means to scratch or to irritate. In this theory, the name of the insect derives entirely from the physical sensation it causes on the skin of the victim. It pinches, it bites.
Are there any theories looking at neighboring languages, like we did with the Arabic word for nevertheless?
The third theory does exactly that. It looks to Arabic for a cognate. The lexicon suggests the Hebrew word might relate to an ancient Arabic root, juna, which means to buzz. It is an onomatopoeia. The name of the bug is simply the sound of a swarm of mosquitoes approaching.
But neither the pinch theory nor the Ruz theory connects back to the concept of uprightness or a pedestal.
They do not. And this is where linguistic scholars have to admit that it stands as an etymological mystery. It is highly likely that this is simply a bizarre homonym sitting right in the middle of a highly philosophical word family.
Just a coincidence.
Yeah, a homonym occurs when two words sound the same and are spelled the same, but have completely different origins and meanings. Think of the English word bark. It can mean the rough outer layer of an oak tree, or it can mean the loud sound a dog makes.
Right.
The two meanings have absolutely nothing to do with each other. They just happen to share the same phonetic space by sheer linguistic coincidence.
So Khan, the bronze pedestal, and Khan, the stinging marsh gnat, might just be linguistic roommates who do not talk to each other.
That is the most probable answer, despite the creative attempts of ancient scholars to link them through the idea of a covering. But the juxtaposition in the dictionary is undeniably striking.
It is wild. A single syllable bridges a gap that spans the entire human experience. It represents the physical anchor of a ship's mast fighting against the storm. It represents the moral rectitude of Joseph's brothers claiming to be structurally sound men.
Yeah.
It is the logical declarations of the prophets, handing down the therefores of divine justice, and the beautiful deflections of the divine nevertheless. It is the execution sequence of the cosmos at creation, confirming that the universe obeyed the spoken word. And yes, it is also a plague of buzzing, stinging insects rising from the dust of Egypt.
It is a remarkable cross-section of ancient thought preserved in a single tiny sound.
Think about the English word so, or therefore. We use these words 100 times a day as filler. We say, so, how are you? Or, therefore, I went to the store. We treat these connective words as disposable packing peanuts in our sentences. But reading these ancient texts through the lens of this specific Hebrew root forces us to reconsider the invisible architecture of our own language.
When modern translators bring ancient texts into English, they often flatten out these structural words to make the sentences flow smoothly for a modern reader. We lose the architectural weight. We read, and it was so, as a mere transition to the next day of creation. But the ancient reader heard the clanging of a massive bronze pedestal being dropped into place.
What if the connective tissue of our speech is not just filler? The logic and the sequence of how we construct reality with our words requires an anchor. So
Yeah.
for you, the listener, the next time you find yourself casually using the word therefore to make a point, consider the weight of what you are doing. You are dropping a plumb line. You are claiming that your logic is structurally sound, anchored in an objective reality. You are building a base for your argument to stand on. The invisible architecture of our language demands honesty.